go along, please ask, because I want this to be more of a discussion. But yeah, so I just want to show you why I'm here. The first video I'd like to show you is a video of the new head of operations at Biosecurity Queensland talking about what happened here in Samford back in May. I don't know if any of you know this, but in May we had a serious contamination event in one of our creeks and our river that meant that the programme had to apologise. And this is Marnie Manning talking about what happened in Samford, and I'll just let you watch and then we can talk about that some more.
Really not loud.
We assess every time we're about to treat, we look at human rights and make sure that we understand that we are infringing on people's human rights, and we make sure that we believe we're as limited as possible as we can be, and be respectful against on people's properties. And that's why I'm very sad to hear that anyone feels worse by our stuff. The second thing we also take into account is called our general environmental duty. Now I know that's again a bit of a bureaucratic speak, so to speak, but essentially that's under the Environmental Act, and what we then do is we do a whole range of mapping where we overlay a whole range of things to look at where we're actually meant to be going. And then once we've done that, we follow up with site treatment planning where we attend and we try to talk to people. Now I will take that we actually didn't do that well enough in the Samford area, and we have learned a huge amount of things out of that. And we are actually trying. Talk about massive overhaul since that. Now I know that doesn't actually change what happened there, and we know we lost the community, but we are trying very hard to actually come back and work with the community there. So that's all I can sort of say to you.
Then notice who the three people on the screen.
Yeah, so the guy in the middle is Dr. Robert Puckett. He's an entomologist from Texas that he comes over to Australia every few years to tell us how we should be, or to talk about the fire ants. He's an expert on fire ants. He's the guy on the other guy is Reece Pianta. He's the advocacy manager at the Invasive Species Council. But the Invasive Species Council advocates big time for this program, and they're doing a tour at the moment with this group where they're going all around Southeast Queensland, telling people how we need this program and how.
So just to clarify, so he gets paid to make sure that we get
Look, at a recent meeting, he did say he wasn't getting paid, but I don't. And that he was here on holiday, and that he was buying all his own food. But the fact he had to qualify that right at the front, I just wonder who wants to go on a holiday and hang out their whole time with some guy from the Invasive Species Council. But you know, if that's how he classes a holiday, then good on him.
So how does he derive an income?
Well, he's an entomologist. He works for this university in Texas, and he.
No, sorry, right.
Yes.
Oh,
How does he derive an income?
Oh, well, yeah, he's for the Invasive Species Council, which, interestingly, during that talk that they were talking there, he actually, Reece said they set up the Invasive Species Council at the same time the fire ants became a problem. So, although the Invasive Species Council is supposed to be for all invasive species, their main focus always seems to be on the fire ants.
Can I ask, because I really think that there's a real money trail here. If you were a politician going on holidays this Christmas, sitting in the plane next to that gentleman, what would be that person's name? What's his wife's name?
Oh, sorry, Nikki Boyd. yeah. So, there's
No, see here.
a bit of a conflict of interest perhaps happening there. Okay, And also before I go into more details on this talk, I do want to say that the residents and people in South East Queensland, we have started a legal letter of demand to the programme because of the contamination event that happened in Dawson Creek in our valley back in May. But I just wanted to make people aware that that's what we're doing at the moment. We're looking at least halting the programme to make sure that they have thoroughly reviewed. Because since that event, they've not got back to me at all. I submitted 32 questions at the last meeting, and not one of them has been responded to. So I just want to say, for those of you that don't know what happened in May, most of us residents, we woke up on Sunday morning on the 26th of May to these helicopters swooping around the valley. So I don't know how many of you saw them, but it was actually quite frightening. And you could see stuff coming out of them, and it was clearly going over our waterways. It was landing on people's roofs, it was landing on people's heads even. I just want to show you.
So we were advised by this eradication program the morning that these choppers were up in the air. So we had no sense of warning that this was actually going to happen. So when this happened on the 26th of May, all of a sudden the fire ants eradication crowd turned up here in this room where we are now to give us an understanding of what they're doing. When we then asked them questions in regards to what they were doing, they couldn't answer them. So there was probably this amount of people, if not more at that, and we started to get a little bit feisty because they couldn't come up with any answers to our questions.
So I just want to show a bit of footage of what actually did happen that morning from our residents' perspective.
So now they're over our property spraying. My husband is down the back. We have not consented. We've also sent emails to the aviation company to state that we do not consent to low-flying vehicles over our property. Yet here we are. We're now flying over Outland. And our neighbours, they're within 150 metres of our neighbour's house, which was not supposed to be the case. And they've sprayed my land when I've explicitly said I do not consent. I have livestock, children. They're now spraying over the South Pine River. They're spraying over the South Pine River now. So that has gone directly into a water source, despite the fact that the regulation and guidelines says that it is dangerous to aquatic life and should not be used near waterways. And they have sprayed it directly over the South Pine River.
And not only the South Pine River, but on people's roofs, which then washed into their tanks. These people then were wondering why we were quite alarmed when this actually happened.
Are we talking the same two chemicals that we're about to use, or talking about using?
Yeah.
From the spray?
Yeah. They did go on to admit that same week that they put the wrong chemical in our waterways. However, that lady there, I know her, and she informed me that they were going to the South Pine River. So we actually went to the South Pine River that afternoon, and the chemicals were everywhere, all over. But it had actually rained that afternoon as well, so a lot of chemicals had already, the poisons had already washed away. But then when we went to Dawson Creek, I'd like to show you this video here now, which is where myself and a couple of other locals took some water collecting bottles and we actually collected the water. But have a look at this.
Here's more evidence of the pyroproxyphene that was aerial dropped all in this running waterway. You can see these granules everywhere. They are in everything. They are on the rocks. They are in the water. This is not good, and this is not permitted to have this chemical in the waterways. It's highly toxic to aquatic life. So these samples will be sent off for testing. But we can see it with our own eyes. We've got video evidence that these bits of corn grit are over all the rocks, and they're in, there's a load there. You can see them. And like I said, they're in all the running water, which is here. This is so sad. This is so devastating for us.
Now, we wouldn't have known that this would have even happened if these people hadn't seen that that's where they were spreading their product. Yes, sir?
The one thing that people should also realise that it's not only water in running water, it's every farm dam that holds aquatic life, our amphibian fauna, our reptiles, so that also needs to be taken into account. So if they're not going to spray near waterways, I would think that farm dams would also be something that they would have to avoid if using that particular chemical.
Hence why we want to keep them at our gate and bring
And most properties outside of the urban area are acreage, and most of them have dams.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess our concern is the pyriproxyphene is the chemical that should not ever go into any water, not any water, that's dams, that's creeks, everything. And the fact that it was just indiscriminately dumped over the entire valley, and then Biosecurity Queensland said, oh, we're sorry, our pilot made an error. He didn't realise there was a running waterway where Dawson Creek was. However, when we found it in South Pine River, I mean, how could they not know that South Pine River's not there, you know?
The contract has been fined or charged?
They admitted they self-reported themselves, but guess who they report themselves to? Themselves. They're monitored by themselves, which is the APVMA, issuing these chemical permits, and then they are reporting themselves to themselves. So I still don't know how they've been held accountable. I mean, if a mining company had done that, I'm pretty sure the outcome would have been very different.
It's mind-boggling.
The interesting thing there, Sarah, even on that, so when I listened to more of that YouTube of Dr. Robert Puckett the other day, and he put up his thing to say, in a estimate that is saying toxic really, in a 1 cubic metre or 1 square metre, there would only be 10 of these 11.
Yeah.
If you look at that, it's about 5 centimetres.
We're going to get...
Yeah, we've actually got more video of that. Yeah.
It's quite alarming, isn't it? Okay.
They did say as a result of them doing that, they would only use S-methoprene in our valley from now on, but we have serious questions over whether that's actually any safer. But for many of you, if you were here when Biosecurity Queensland held their meeting here after they did what they did, we've got some video footage of that confession from Graham Dudgeon, who was the then head of operations, who's no longer the head of operations. I wonder why. But yeah, if you'd like to watch this, you can see.
This is what he admits.
Can I explain what we do around waterways? And I will acknowledge, and admit right now that we made a mistake with making one of your creeks. Well, we might be, but all I will allude to one explain to you what has happened, what our normal protocol is.
He doesn't have to explain too much more to us, does he? He has actually poisoned our waterways. And then wondered why we were a bit irate here when he actually told us that as members of this beautiful, pristine valley.
Yeah, so that video basically just goes on with him saying they did the wrong thing and they will report themselves to the regulator, and we're sorry Samford, we made a little mistake. I just wonder though, would they have actually even admitted to that mistake if they hadn't found out that us locals were getting independent water tests done? And that is exactly what we did, and we could prove beyond doubt that it was pyriproxyfen in the creek and in the South Pine River. And tonight we actually have Dr. Washington Sanchez here who would like to talk about those results that he did for us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Washington Sanchez. A little bit of information about myself. I live in Monglorious. We also received the notice that they're going to come in and try and invade our property. Definitely there are no firearms up in Monglorious. Earlier on, I kind of did a practice run and said, okay, so I have 3 degrees in chemistry, bachelor's degree, a master's, and a PhD in analytical chemistry, and I've done medical research as well, all with transdermal drug delivery, so I understand about how some of these chemicals work and the potential harm that they can cause. The main thing is that I looked at those results and I got quite alarmed by it, especially the one of Pine Rivers, which was 81 micrograms. That's 81 parts per trillion, right? It doesn't seem like it's much. However, in the European Union, the maximum allowed in any waterway is 10 micrograms. Now, the nature of Pine Rivers, 3.3, Pine Rivers flows a lot faster, whereas Dawson River has a few more areas where the water pools and resides a lot longer. And so, therefore, the 2 separate different readings, 181 and 3.3, at one stage, that value would have been a lot higher. And that was concerning because that water was downstream. And we know that we have very unique fauna in our creek and in our river, only endemic to the area. And so what's that going to do to those animals, that fauna, those crayfish, etc., down the track? We don't know. Because it doesn't kill them outright, but it will prevent the reproductive system of the crustaceans. Number 2 that I wanted to share with you. A few days later, I had several phone calls from different areas where they had dumped the bait on the roofs of the houses. Because we had rain, that went into the water tanks. And so the operators called me desperately trying for me to go in and clean the tanks. I don't clean tanks. I analyze water and I give recommendations on how best to treat contaminated water. So the moment I say that, of course, they hang up and they, I say, look, call these other 2 companies that will be able to help. So it is a serious problem because it has gone in quite a few different places. Now, I also seen rivers that have been affected by it, creeks, ponds that were pristine, crystal clear water, gone completely mucky, murky, and smelly. That is sulfur-reducing bacteria, which I always call it an opportunistic bacteria that comes in once the normal, fauna and flora that happens in the lake dies off. This bacteria comes in and starts breaking up and removes the oxygen from the water, and the water turns absolutely terrible, right? And you look at it, you can almost walk across it. The other thing that I've seen is, and this is anecdotal, and I have no reasons not to believe the owners of these farms, where they have been breeding a very particular type of cattle, beautiful cattle actually, beautiful, nice white animals, perfect. For nearly 10 years, never had a problem. Since they baited that property 3 times, 1 calf was stillborn, and the second one that was born had neurological problems. And I saw it. The animal could not stand on its own. It struggled to walk, and it had to be put down. Now they also have some mares, and they're about to give birth, and they're concerned about those things. Now,
The autopsy reports, by
yes,
the way,
they're available. Autopsy reports are available if anybody wants. I can get a copy of it. Now, my area of expertise is water treatment, water analysis, and if anybody's concerned with those things, you can call me. I mean, shameless plug right now. I've written a book about water analysis and water treatment and water quality. Can you lift up the book there? There you go. So, I have a copy of it. So, if anybody ever wants to know anything about water and wants to fall asleep reading a book, this is it. Buy my book. Guaranteed to send you to sleep. So, any questions about water quality or anything? Yes, go ahead.
It was mentioned before that it was the lady there asked about what a whole heap of questions about this chemical. Do you have any idea if there's any half-life with this chemical?
Yes, they do. In fact, that was the first question I asked. That's exactly the same question I asked when we were in the first meeting, and they couldn't tell me that answer. So I researched it, and then they actually sent me an email saying 3 to 4 weeks, depending on where it lands. It could be a lot quicker, the half-life of the chemical, if it lands in water. And then what happens with that chemical is that it breaks down to secondary and tertiary metabolites. And they are much longer lived and more poisonous than the previous one. All right? So, and that's pyriproxyfen and methylprednisolone. Both of them have short life. But I also know that they have used fipronil in some properties. Now, fipronil is perfluorinated and perchlorinated hydrocarbon. And that, yes, absolutely. Exactly the same thing I said when I found out that they were using blanket spray in that. The problem with that particular chemical is two things. It's long-lived. It has a very long, up to 12 months half-life. It accumulates in fatty tissue, and it will go across transdermally, given the right conditions. So those things, and especially if you have animals like chickens, and if they eat anything that's contaminated, that will end up in the eggs that you are, or the fish that you will consume. So that is another thing that needs to be worried about. What are they applying, and what are the preservatives they use in these chemicals? So it's not just the active ingredients. There's also secondary chemicals that have been used. So, any other questions? Yes.
If they were to drop the bait on our roofs and it got into our tank water, what's the will the filter this out?
Well, depends on the type. Depends on the type of filter. Yeah, if you have at least 2 carbon filters, one granulator and one carbon block, you will trap those chemicals quite effectively. But then you will need to change those cartridges more often, rather than 12 months, 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Right? So that answer that question?
Yeah, any other effects in your body from ingesting?
Yes, it will affect you, but it really depends on the concentration that is in the tank. How much you have in the roof and in the gutters, and how much rain you had, and so on and so forth. So it's all about dilutions and concentrations. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What would happen if you've got a chihuahua, you've got a fox, jack russell, something like that, and you've got small problems around the property, dog always heads for a week? What would happen to a small animal ingesting what could be a heavier concentration of what we saw in the liver?
Well, there is ample evidence that those animals have a hard time surviving. Sorry, there's a gentleman there. Yes, sir?
Outside of your area of expertise, I totally acknowledge, but have there been any studies done on when these chemicals are burnt?
What do you mean? How they?
When you apply fire to the chemical, what does it produce?
Okay. So pyrolytic decomposition of these chemicals. Pyriproxyfen and methylprednisolone. Methylprednisolone will break down into CO2 and couple of other chemicals, not a Samford. The pyroproxyfen has a lot of benzene rings in it, about 3 to 4 benzene rings. And those then becomes PAHs that end up in the transformation with the fire, the organic matter that is burning may end up as a PAH, and then that could, if deposited in the roof, end up in your water, and then that could be a problem.
But it also is soaked with oil, and oil is
Yeah.
highly flammable.
Yeah.
It's a question that needs to be put that probably to the department. But hearing that, in the background I was a volunteer firefighter for a long period of time. But that scares me because these areas that they're putting into are bushfire prone areas, which means that if I'm looking at it from a firefighter's point of view, they've just created no-go zones.
Yeah.
Well,
I can't put a firefighter into those conditions knowing that it could have harmful effects, particularly if you're talking about things like benzene, those sorts of PFAs, those kinds of chemicals are identified as particular carcinogens
the PFAS
are relevant to firefighters, and they are actually known to be causation factors to specific types of cancers in firefighters. So unless the department provides specific mapping, it doesn't matter. If the chemical is in the environment, like benzenes don't break down particularly quickly. The other chemicals, if they're broken down into their particulates, and they're still toxic, just the fact you apply fire can actually release them into
This is why we've come together tonight around this kitchen table.
It needs to be raised.
We're going to
and they need to provide
strongly
specific
want
mapping
you to become part of our campaign
Bring some fire.
against this.
Because
We'll write that.
at this point, given what you've said about toxicity and the way they break down, they have just created no-go zones for firefighters, and we need to know that now. Because at the moment, anywhere where they've planned a map of any kind of drop has become a no-go zone. And looking at that perimeter mapping, most of that area is in high risk bushfire prone areas.
Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, well, just to put these chemicals are used, they've got domestic uses. The fipronil and the methoprene, for those dog owners around the place, there's a product called Frontline. And Frontline Plus, it's sprayed over dogs and cats, put on the back of necks, contains both those chemicals. It's been on the market now for 20 years, so it is in our houses. The pyroproxyfen, there's another top spot for dogs, not for cats, called Advantage. That's its active ingredient.
Yeah. That's why I never use them on my dog.
Well, they've been on the market for
I know. I
20
totally
years,
get
at least 20. No,
concentrations are very different though. The concentrations are very different.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, just putting it out there.
This is Dr. Phil Carmsworthy, who
Yeah.
also is very knowledgeable. Yes.
I'm not sure it's really true, but what was it, benzene?
Benzene rings,
That's also can cause leukemia, acute leukemia, cancer, toxicity of the blood.
Yeah. I mean, again, concentrations and the amount that you take and the exposure, all sorts of things, that you need to take into account.
I have a property up at Ocean View, and I sometimes run out of water. So my method is to go down to the Unity Water station down here, near the showgrounds, and pick up an IBC full water for my tank for home use. I wonder what Unity Water would say about their water quality that they supply to us.
Yeah.
Where is their water coming from? Do they realise the treatment program is here? And are they taking any safeguards at all with supplying clean, potable water that I pay for
Yeah, I can answer for them.
That's a question. What it is, we're writing all these questions down.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanchez. I just want to acknowledge that Dr. Sanchez was here at our function when the mandate was being discussed to us. I'm pretty aware that you can understand that this man knows his shit. And I can tell you right now, those people weren't happy, right? They weren't happy that there are people who came to this room and acknowledged their powers, their understanding on what it takes to look after our biodiversity and the health of their children and their animals and our people. So when people actually do say that this was an irate room, I can guarantee you it was.
That was our community engagement, and they engaged after they already did it.
Yes, did you hear that? That was our community engagement. They'd already engaged after the event by 4 days. They probably wouldn't have engaged, but because we were able to see the wrong that they were doing, they've all of a sudden said, shit, we better go and sort these dudes out. But they thought we were going to just be a room full of who cares people. They had 4 chairs, 5 chairs on this side, 7 chairs on that side. We had to help them put chairs out with people standing everywhere. They just thought that there was going to be a handful of people. Well, let's do it at 5:30 in the afternoon when nobody would turn up. But people like this man turned up, and holy moly, they shat themselves.
Actually, that first video I showed you of the new head of operations, Marnie Manning, I don't know if people heard, but she did actually say, we do realise we impinge on people's human rights. She actually said that in the video, and she also said we have lost the Samford community, and that is what they did. They've lost us, and therefore they are really worried now because they need 100% community buy-in for this programme to work, and at the moment they just don't have that.
And what they also have done is that Dr. Robert Puppet and that little thing you saw with Mrs. Manning, we were supposed to have an engagement with Dr. Robert Puppet and co. in the Moreton Bay region. Well, they've now cancelled that. I phoned Mr. Reese Pianta today to find out why they have cancelled that meeting, and he couldn't tell me. And I know why he's cancelled it. He's cancelled it because he knows that this many people are going to turn up. And you know, the day before I actually spoke to him as well, and he said that he was afraid for his constituents, that afraid. He was scared we were going to beat him up, perhaps. We're not interested in beating them up. We're interested in understanding what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, well, we just want the truth about what's going on with this programme because they don't seem to be very forthcoming with their information. I just wanted to point out...
Just on that point, they conducted a water test at the same time that you conducted...
Oh, yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Have we seen that?
Yeah, so I was called by the Environmental Protection Science Department, and the first thing they said to me, anything you say may be used in court, as if I've done something wrong. And they actually said, oh, we don't think you've done anything wrong, but we need you to know that you don't have to talk to us, but we wanted to ask you some questions about where you found these poisons in the creek. And then I said to them, well, no, I've got nothing to hide. You know, I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to share our reports with you. And yeah, I said to them, well, can we see your reports? And they said no. So our community have spent $4,000 now on water tests because we needed to make sure that the creek was clean again. And I'm going to be seeking compensation from the programme to get that money back. Anyway, we touched on this a bit earlier with, this is a video again of Dr. Robert Puckett at a recent event at Currumbin, and he's discussing how many of those chemicals or those poisons should be in a square metre, and he's going to discuss that now.
All the cornbread granules on the grass, maybe you don't have to do this. The application rate is 1 pound or 1.5 pounds per acre. And so, just for example, have you seen these granular firing plates? It's a cornbread carrier matrix. So is that pretty close to a square meter? At the right angle of the square meter? Somewhere in the neighborhood? How many individual granules, if you apply granular baits properly, the proper application rate, would you imagine? And I do this all the time with pest control guys in Texas because they're so on file. Sometimes you can go these baits. How many individual granules would you imagine you would find in this square meter? How many? Yes. 11. That goes in the setup. 11 units. That's how little bait is required to destroy plots and environments. So keep that in mind.
So that's 11 granules in 1 square metre. This here is probably the size of my 2 hands. 0.1 of a square metre you have here, and there is a count up to number 16. In areas I have actually witnessed on 1 leaf 11 granules. When we have actually gone to visit these people who are doing this job for this mandate, they're actually got a fertiliser spreader, just a hand fertiliser spreader, and off they go. And it's pissing out of there, and you're telling me that there's 11 granules on a square metre? It's not. So straight away, Mr. Puckett, or Dr. Puckett, has told us that they are in breach of their contract once again.
Thank you. And
can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So he's a specialist based in Texas, but they have a massive fire ant problem in Texas.
Well, they haven't been able to eradicate fire ants anywhere in the world, but they are telling us here in Australia that they're going to do it.
So why did your taxpayer money go to fund for him? He doesn't pay any money to tell us that.
He told us that he's having a holiday.
yeah, he's on holiday.
Reese Pianta, you love a holiday. They have
They have
as far as
eradicated.
the Australian point.
Yeah.
This might be an ignorant question because I haven't been in Samford that long, and I've only just found out about the fire ant poison being not treatment. So let's use the word of what it is.
Poison.
Yeah.
I work for a big corporate. I know about choosing particular words, treatment versus poison. What are they saying about? What I don't understand is if there's no fire ants, what is the point? So this is the bit that I don't understand. And I haven't researched it, so maybe the information is online and I haven't Googled it properly. But to eradicate something, it needs to exist. Yeah. So you can't eradicate something if it's not there. And if I live in the village, I don't have an acreage, you all have a dream that have acreages, that's the goal. If I have no ants on my property, why is it going to go on the property? This is what I can't...
Well, this is what we keep asking them.
Is there an answer?
This is our
We have no answer to your question, and we keep asking these people. But their permit will state that you must not put this product where fire ants aren't present. They're the words. So they're in breach of their own permit. They're just willy-nilly. Now, what is it and why is it that they're doing it? I fundamentally believe that it is.
I mean, there's corporates behind the chemicals, right? And if there's corporates behind the chemicals, you always need to ask questions about safety reports, etc., because there's a lot of money.
It is.
And fire ants are bad news, I get it, right? And you need to do something about them. But this blanket, I don't understand. This
They
is
think-
what I can't get my head around.
They've supposedly created this invisible chemical boundary around all the areas where the fire ants are, and they're trying to say they're catching outliers and then they're working in. So they think if there was a fire ant in a bale of hay in a suburb, even though it's not even in the ground, they've then said that whole area 5 kilometres out of that bale of hay is now infested, and that's how they're now using this program to do that, to bait to poison where there are no fire ants, and just in case.
I'm a little confused because we're sort of jumping into the poisons and what can happen and all the rest. And a grey area for me is you would think that for somebody to sign off on this, it would have to have some sort of evidence-based plan. Now, we've got the Texan flying in, who says, yeah, it works in Texas, otherwise it didn't work in Texas. Why does it all this stuff? Why would somebody be paying it? Unless, as you say, there's some sort of money trail. I don't think it's as sophisticated as a money trail, to be honest. I think they're a bullets bunch. I don't think they've done the homework. I don't think it's evidence-based at all. I think they're doing the big hammer when attack hammers required. I think they're disregarding public safety. I think they're disregarding all the people that make the product. We put out very specific guidelines, which you just mentioned, should not be closed down unless there is evidence. To the point of why they're doing it, when I queried them, they said that the drone can fly, the female can fly up to 7 kilometres away from a known nest, so they are required to do an area 7.5 k's around wherever they found a nest. Now, is there any evidence that happens? I doubt it. I think somebody's making it up. And every time you challenge them, as you pointed out, nobody comes up with an answer. So we can fluff around and talk about what it's doing, but we actually need some action. We actually need to know what our rights are. That was appalling, that helicopter flyover. Now, the rights are really well written. I've had a look at the Biosecurity Act. And if they come inside 300 metres of your house, it's only under certain conditions. If they can't come at 150 metres unless risk analysis is done, you can challenge the risk analysis. That's why they won't come with 150 metres with an aeroplane. It's too complicated. We can make their life very difficult very quickly. If everybody stood around and said, no, 300 metres, I'm not signing anything. If you do a locus of points of 300 metres around livestock, vehicles, people, houses, they just couldn't do it. And on top of that, of course, all the waterways. So, you know, I love all this, but at the end of the night, I'm hoping that we can say, right, this is what we're going to do.
And that's why I meant. Yeah, no, thank you. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, we are doing a letter of demand, and we would like extra stuff like that added into that letter, because we just want this program halted at least until we know, you get some proper answers, and there are no answers at the moment.
And we have someone here, we have someone here who experienced a chopper within 20 metres of her roof.
At a height of less than 50 metres.
Then you got it on
I've got the web track screenshot, and when I sent it to CASA, they misread the legend and told me that I had no cause of complaint because it showed 500 feet, but that was actually just a legend and not actually what the helicopter was doing, so they didn't hear my complaint. Burner's office told me it was okay because the hot were off. 20 metres from my roof.
Just want to say, I've been buying hay bales for 35 years,
yes.
More than 35 years. I've never seen an ant, not any sort of ant, in a single bale of hay in that time. I've got a brochure in my letterbox last week before, all about moving hay. Can you ask the question, how many ants nests have been in the hay bales, or is this just propaganda for the horse owners in
Propaganda. It's all propaganda.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had them come onto our property today, doing a surveillance and just advising that they're going to be flying over behind near the Samford dump, and our property runs along the South Pine River. And I said they wanted me to sign a form, and I said, look, I'm not signing anything. I don't believe in blanket spray. And I have an autoimmune problem. So I said, we don't want you on our property. And they said, well, you may not have a choice. And we'll make note of these complaints. And I said, and the South Pine River, you can't spray. So I said, how far are you going to come back from the river if this happens? And they said 1.5, and I thought, oh, kilometres, that's good. 1.5 metres. And I said, well, what about our houses? I said, last time you went over House Mountain, and you can't tell me that you're, the helicopter pilot can control the drift of this product.
He told us here that he employs these unbelievable chopper pilots that are within centimetres of where they drop this stuff. When you look at rotor spray, when that morning they did the House Mountain, and I looked up and I saw rotor spray coming out of this aircraft. It was absolutely phenomenal. So you're right, don't sign anything.
Well, they said, and from your houses, the helicopter will be 30 metres from your house. I said, 30 metres, that is not enough.
It's not authorised, and this is from someone who understands aviation inside out.
Where does the work? You end up talking to bureaucrats and person. Who is the person who gets the attitude where the buck stops?
Well, we've been going to all of our governments. When I went to Nikki Boyd, for instance, she said, look, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about this because it's a conflict of interest. And I said, why is that, Nikki? And she said, my partner runs the Invasive Species Council, who was Reece Pianta. Then we go to someone else. Oh no, you're going to have to go to someone else because it's a conflict of interest. There's conflict of interest everywhere we go.
I got an email back from Nikki Boyd's office yesterday or today, I can't remember, and they directed me to the DA. So I said, I just want to
You go around in circles. You go around. I did this back in March. I wrote to everyone in March. I wrote to the Greens. I wrote to Nikki Boyd. I wrote to the LNP. I was just in a loop. They put me to Mark Ferner in the end. He's the Minister of Agriculture, and even then, he just said we need to go to the programme. You go to the programme, they tell you to go to the Minister, so you never get answered.
The people went to a coffee meeting with our agricultural minister, and he just shut everybody down and told a couple of people that they're extremely rude because they were asking him questions. So that answers that question to you. If you can come up with someone that we can go to. We've gone from DAF to DAF saying, no, you're going to have to go to ABBMA for this stuff. Then we go to ABBMA and they tell us to go to DAF. And we're going,
we do have some other slides that might answer some questions. So unless you've got a question that's really relevant.
I want to know what entity the Fire Ant program actually is. Is it a company, Pty Ltd? And if so, or if not, how does it get a permit? It seems to me like they're a nothing company.
through Biosecurity Queensland.
Are they? But then you talk to them and they treat it as though it's a separate entity.
Yeah. Biosecurity Queensland is just part of the Queensland government.
No governing body other than Biosecurity Queensland.
We're getting the media involved.
Yeah, we're going. This is what's going to start happening now. Because if there was only 7 people and us here, we would be going.
We can talk about that.
Here we go.
This was a screenshot of the flight tracking on the 26th of May, and that just shows how much the helicopter went over Mount Glorious and Mount Nebo. I also want to point out that they shouldn't really be needing to put the poisons over the forest because the ants don't live in the shade. Even they admitted at that last meeting, people in America grow trees in their yard to get rid of the fire ants because the fire ants don't like shade. So I just want to point out here, look how much they've done over our national parks. And all it does is it goes into the canopies. And it's pointless.
Where fire ants aren't even going to live. But this is what lives there, and as you people know, it's orange eyes, green tree growth. Please do.
One point. How many people here actually seen a fire ant? 1, 2. I grew up with them in South America. I was born in South America until the age of 13. We had them in our home. And in fact, I made the mistake of riding my bicycle and kicking them out. And yeah, I've experienced fire ants, but they're not as dangerous as they portray it to be. First of all, let me put that there, right? So,
I have a question for you there.
Okay.
Since you say you live in South America,
yeah.
and you're the kind of person I wanted to ask this question of. What kind of lifestyle changes do you make when you've got fire ants like that?
None.
So in other words, okay, just to reframe the question a little bit more. On my property, I have got jumping jack ants, I've got ball ants, I've got green ants.
I worry more about the jumping jack ants than the fire ants.
So in other words, they're entirely avoidable with a few lifestyle choices of not stepping on that man over there. You put a bit of poison on it and make it go away.
There's only one ant in South America that we make a life change, and it's called the marabunta. The marabunta is a black ant about that big, and they come in big swarms and they just raise everything and kill everything on its path, right? So we put big buckets of water on tables and we get on top of the table until they go past. That happens once every 7 years, every 10 years. I experienced it once.
Now, we need to keep going, guys, because we want to get past this and then we will start wrapping up a whole lot more.
Okay, I wanted to just say a brief history of fire ants in Australia, but literally they were discovered in 2001, but by the time they'd already discovered them, they'd been here since the 90s because they were already covering 36,000 hectares of land and the nests were half a metre high. So even though they say they've been here since 2001, that's not true, it's the 90s. They've done lots of different eradication efforts and many of them have been abandoned, and then they changed to containment and suppression again, but then they went back to eradication. And the only reason they're doing, well, I believe eradication creates more funding because it gets funded by the states and the federal government if it's called eradication. If they say it's no longer eradication, then Queensland has no more of that money, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that money in a minute, the figures, but in their brochure they were proud to say that they're the only country to attempt an eradication on this scale, or is it just that we're crazy? Because no other country has ever managed to eradicate them from an area of this size. We're talking 800,000 hectares, so again, there's not much to go on. I just want to point out that back in 2004, Henry Palaszczuk was asked if he was winning the war against the fire ants, and he said his simple answer back then is, we can find fire ants and we can kill fire ants, but he didn't actually say yes. And yeah, so basically Queensland's been trying to eradicate these ants since 2004. Henry Palaszczuk also says back then that 13,000 hectares of land was of no longer interest to the fire ant program because they realised fire ants don't live in certain areas. Like, they don't like heavily forested areas, they don't like undisturbed, they prefer disturbed soil. That's why they're mostly at building sites, so you see them popping up in new developments. But areas like Mount Glorious and Mount Nebo, they would be, fire ants just would not want to live there. So what I want to know now is, why do we have to poison every inch of land on, we're talking 1.97 million acres of land, when we know for a fact that they're not going to be in certain areas? So that was one of my questions.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And then, the poisoning doesn't just happen once, it's 6 times.
That's right.
Yeah.
They've been going since 2001.
Yeah.
Sounds like the vaccine all over again, doesn't it?
Anyway, I just wanted to point out somebody who has written quite extensively about the mismanagement of this program and the funding is Dr. Pam Swepson. She just recently won Whistleblower of the Year award. She had worked for the department for a couple of years, and she's made the comment, in 20 years we have spent $1 billion and the problem is 20 times worse. She also goes on to say, this is what I was talking about earlier, about the $1 billion spent so far, is that Queensland has only had to put 10% towards that $1 billion. So all that $1 billion that's coming into Queensland from federal and other states really is a big money spinner for Queensland. It's creating jobs, it's a regular kind of income coming in. So and it will never end. No, and they've got another $500 million for this program up until 2027, and they'll keep applying for more.
They even mentioned the Olympics, that they wanted to eradicate ants prior to that's got to do with it, right?
Yeah, this seems like an arbitrary date of 2032. So again, it's just about the money. Like I said, 800,000 hectares. I actually calculated that based on the current cost of chemicals, this program will eventually spend $240 million on chemicals alone, and that's without any increases over the years in the cost of them. So chemical companies would be loving this right now. Back in 2021, a strategic review said in order to eradicate the ants when they're on a smaller scale, then they needed 200 to 300 million a year to do an elimination by 2032. At the moment, Mark Ferner's office advised me they've got 113 million a year that's been allocated until 2027. So I don't know how they're even running this program because the funding's not really adding up.
And the day that we got this actual statistics on dollars, I went home, and I very rarely watch television, but I did watch the news. And in the news was this man who had blown his head off out the front of a hospital in Kingaroy because there was no service to him in the psych ward. He'd been there 3 to 4 times and not been able to be served. But yet they will spend all this money on this load of garbage. But here we have problems in our health and education. So the dollar value is a really important thing, and yes, I do believe our health is extremely important as well, and our beautiful animals and our biodiversity, flora and fauna. But when it comes to them spending money, and so much money, and who do we go to, like this gentleman said, who do we go to and say, listen here, you are just wasting so much money on a load of propaganda and garbage. Why aren't we fixing our health system and our education system and our poor homeless and our everything else that's going on at the moment? Our world is in crisis. We don't need to be sitting here talking about a bunch of nutcases trying to kill a fire ant that may be there.
So one of the biggest concerns to us as well is, away from the funding, is that there are no environmental impact studies. When we've asked for them, there's nothing. And whenever you go to their literature and their website, they keep pointing us to this very old study done by Melinda McNaught. And this was from data in 2001, where they monitored fire ants and they poisoned them, and they confirmed that it didn't seriously affect the native ants. However, when you actually... Oh, where's my...
You were going too good. Okay, keep going.
It was a study that was done, and what they did, they looked at 60 sites eventually in the Brisbane area, and already all those sites had been treated with paraquat already, but they identified those as sites that they wanted for the effect of paraquat on ants. And I think the conclusion was, Sarah?
Here we go.
The conclusion of the study was that the ants, all the native ants came back, except for one type of native ant. Is that right? So there's one native ant which was completely wiped out by the paraquat, but the others apparently all came back. But we have poked holes in the study because each of the 60 sites were on average only 532 square metres. So we are all, I mean, most of you are probably on more than 532 square metres. So that each of the 60 sites were only on 532 square metres. They had already been baited. They had no benchmark as to what number of ants, what genera of ants should have been on those properties in the beginning. They used their staff to monitor the number of ant species and genera, and I think they identified only 12 for the study. So in the Brisbane region there are over 70 genera of ants naturally, but they only looked at 12. They only looked at 12, and of those 12, they admitted one was wiped out. So, and they did it over 6 years with arbitrary data collection.
So that goes back to our environmental impact study. When you're doing a plot, it's only quite small. But when you look at them carpet bombing our biodiversity of 800,000 square hectares, it boggles me that I can't even say it. They will then say, oh, but we've done a plot. Well, our plot is only probably as big as this room. Of course, an ant's going to make its way from just out there into here. But such a large, broad scale of poisoning, where is our insects and ants and whatever else live there going to come from? My question to them was, are they just going to fall out of the moon? Walk from Toowoomba?
Can I make a quick comment about the ants? I'm a retired ecologist from last year, a wildlife ecologist, and what a lot of people may not realise, that we probably have a lot more than 70 species of ants. There's probably ant species out there that haven't been described yet in the Brisbane region. But more importantly, a lot of people won't realise that we have native bees, we've got introduced bees, we've got flies, beetles, etc. Ants are also pollinators of flowers, and also ants are insect controllers as well. You may not like your jump ants, you may not like your bull ants, but they're insect predators.
They're part of our food chain, you're dead right.
Well, it's part of their diet.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't lose the fact that, oh, well, they're only ants, you know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's aware of the seriousness of this, and otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. I'm sort of thinking that maybe we should be, because we know what's going on, we shouldn't be focusing on that. We should be focusing on a way to get something done about it. So how do we do that? How do we address that, and what plans do we make to find the right people to make things happen?
Exactly. I totally agree, but without this foundation, we're not aware that we actually have to take the next step. You're exactly right.
Then, the only way that people are going to start to listen is fear of loss. Fear of losing their income, their prestigious position in government. We've got an election coming up, we've got 3 months, 2 months. Stephen Miles absolutely crapping himself, still the top of the food chain, and he's got everybody else to pull their heads in, because he doesn't want the problem.
Okay, let's do it. Can you help us, please? Let's all get in there and get out to as many people as we possibly can, that not only do we want this to stop, we want to understand what it is that these people are doing and hold them accountable.
Well, I did a lot of this PowerPoint because didn't know how many people knew what was going on, so it was just more of I feel at the moment we're just in sort of an education stage, because obviously all of you here would probably receive those lovely glossy brochures. They've got $10 million to spend on their marketing. A lot of that budget goes on their marketing because they're trying to convince everyone all the time that this is the best program ever and this is what we need to do. We're just a small group here that's growing. We've now got over 2,000 members in our Facebook group, and we're growing by the day. So people coming together, we can make a difference, but we all need to come together to do that. And in order to get other people on board, I'm trying to educate them as to why this program is insane. So one of the things is, we've talked about the chemical permits. They are breaching them left, right and centre and continually getting away with it because they're saying, oh, well, we got an exemption for that, we got an exemption for that. Well, the two chemicals that we've spoken about, pyriproxyfen and S-methoprene, their permits themselves don't make any sense. So for pyriproxyfen, do not apply when it's raining. Every time they applied it here, it rained. It says don't put down where poultry can eat it for 24 hours. Who gets told that? People got chickens, they're eating it. And it apparently can go into the eggs. I want to point out, this is S-methoprene. This is the permit first page, and it says the supplier, the permit holder is DAF, Biosecurity Queensland. The supplier is DAF, Biosecurity Queensland. So they seem to be supplying the chemical and using it. But also another chemical supplier is called Wellmark International Australia. I just want to point out that on Google Maps, if you look up Wellmark International, which is the supplier of chemical, it's this little shed here in the middle of nowhere. Like, what is this company? Like, why?
Where are they hiding from? Like a meth lab.
And this is their permit that says you can put it into water up to 1.5 metres. I mean, and then the same permit says very toxic to aquatic life, do not contaminate wetlands. This is in the one permit. It totally contradicts itself. It also says do not apply where fire ants are not present or no longer present or no longer evident. Well, there's no fire ants at Highvale. There's never been any fire ants at Highvale. And yet we are told we're infested because there was an ant in a soil delivery at Camp Mountain months ago. So again, totally say this one actually says do not let your poultry eat it at all. And yet we're told this one's organic. They tell you it's organic, it's safe for organic farms. So yeah, we've obviously questioned safety of the chemicals already. S-methoprene has been linked to frog deformities and other chemicals that they're using in the fast-acting baits into the nest are also really not very nice chemicals. Indoxacarb, hydromethanol, fipronil, these are all chemicals that we don't... Yeah, carcinogenic. Again, I talked about the chemicals. I just want to point out we've been helped out as a group by a doctor called Dr. Matt Landos. He's been very outspoken about the fire ant program. He was in The Guardian earlier this year talking about the wildly toxic poisons used on fire ants. He's issued us with a number of key points of things he's concerned about. A lot of this stuff we've talked about already, carcinogenic. One of his comments is the withholding periods set for organic farms appear to be based only on the primary chemical breakdown, not the metabolites. So that's to say that when the chemicals are in the soil, they can last a lot longer in the soil than the original parent chemical. But one thing I want to point out with organic farms is prior to this fire ant eradication program, they could not put S-methoprene anywhere near an organic farm for at least 12 months. So if you used S-methoprene, you had to wait 12 months before you could get your organic status. Well, in 2022, when they were discussing this crazy program, they realised it would affect the organic farmers. So they had a bit of a chat and they all agreed, let's reduce it to 3 weeks. So you can now buy organic food that's only 3 weeks away being treated with this chemical.
That's quite alarming.
That's quite alarming. Another doctor that's been helping us out is Dr. Connie Turney. You can look her up. She's written extensively about this fire ant program. And there's just another map I wanted to highlight. So the map on this side with all the colours is where they've done all the aerial treatments from 2017 to 2021. And some of these places have been poisoned literally 11 times. 11 times aerial baiting. And then look at this map here. This is the same area. There's still ants there. So clearly it's not working. The program is, the aerial baiting is not working. So yeah, that's our list of concerns that we've kind of gone through. Alternatives, there definitely are safer alternatives to dealing with ants if and when you have them. Orange oil, diatomaceous earth is a very good one. And something that's just recently come to my attention is they've actually got the technology for your phone to be able to identify an ant. And it turns out that Biosecurity Queensland is the only organisation that this guy who develops this technology, Biosecurity Queensland is the only organisation that does not use it. Like, why? Like, you know, I mean, if people could identify ants, they could treat them and get on with it. But so that was a bit of conversation going on. And then basically we're just coming to the part of what can you do right now. And what we're saying is put up a no trespass sign, put it on your gate. It will remind the crews to show respect to your property. Whether it will stop them in the long run, I don't know, but at the moment it's working, and it's also a message that you are not happy about this by putting these up. So we're actually selling these over there.
They've got a $10 million budget to do it this week.
Yeah.
Buy one of these that we can make 50 cents out of.
Yeah.
I believe what these things are going to do is it is going to stop these people from entering your space when you're not there, I'm hoping. It has happened. I put one up on a friend's gate. They made contact with her before they actually went in onto her site. So I'm believing that it's going to be way easier for you to be approached by these people, or you approaching them, if it's at your gate instead of 15 of them marching around your paddock, and all of a sudden you go, what are you doing here? You know, so that's what this is all for. Please don't be alarmed when you see these. We're not, we're not vigilantes, and we're not running around putting this stuff around our pristine, beautiful valley. It's a shame we have to. When I actually see these on my gate, I go, what? It's insanity, really. But we need to be insane to deal with insanity.
Ben, am I correct that if your gates are open, the fact that you're not at home, they deem it as they have access. Now, if you've got a dog on your property that then runs at them, because that's why you've got a dog, that they will likely complain to council.
And then your dog is deemed as dangerous, then you have to abide by the council regulations. Exactly right. So what is actually happening is madness in regards to all of that. They said that they would not come onto your land if your gates are closed. That's rubbish. I do know someone that is actually quite alarmed at the fact that they jumped his fence and they were on his property.
In their operational documents, they're actually allowed, if they've made multiple attempts to come onto your property and you've not been there, they're allowed to take bolt cutters and cut your locks. And then you will come home and there'll be a new lock on there with a phone number for you to phone, and you've got to go pick up the key.
Yeah, so this is quite crazy. I'm just wondering whether our good friend Jason McGarry would like to explain to you people what he has been doing for quite a number of years in regards to fire ants. Are you happy to have it? Thank you, Jason. Would you like
it was interesting having that image of Henry Palestine. So when he was the agricultural minister, I was also the president of the Landscaping Association in Queensland, and we were working together on trying to actually come up with ways to try and control the fire ant program. The fire ants. We actually, back then, they had the opportunity to actually solve the problem, and there just wasn't any funding. There were people within government didn't deem it was important enough to eradicate it. And that was our opportunity to get rid of it back then. Unfortunately, we had to live with it. And yes, the hysteria hysteria around how dangerous and stuff like that is probably a little bit sort of blown out of proportion. But you do have to respect them. They do injure you, and they can injure animals. I've had numerous staff have to have extensive periods of time off because of bites from fire ants. It depends on your body type and your makeup and stuff like that. So we can't ignore the problem. We've got them. I believe the best way to treat them is all you in here, looking at your properties, identifying and understanding what to actually look for. And I would guarantee that a lot of, a greater percentage of people wouldn't even understand or know what a fire ant nest would actually look like. That is the best way to solve this problem. So in my business for many years, when we're looking after different areas and we see them, we've been directly just treating those nests, not the blanket spraying. We've got approval with our drones to actually do blanket spraying, but we want to do it. But it's interesting, I think to date, Samford Valley's got 7 nests, I think, in total, that have been identified. Up on the Sunshine Coast is one project that we work on. It's got more than that, and I can tell you now, we haven't got the same level of interest than what the Valley has here. I go back to think, I don't understand why they're doing blanket spray. The south side and the western suburbs we've been working a long time, there's thousands of nests on some of those projects out there. And some projects we haven't seen a biosecurity person treating nests for years. So I don't understand why all of a sudden Samford's become the focal point of controlling it. Maybe they figured we're soft and we're accepting. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like the chemical companies say, if you haven't got them, don't put the chemical out. There's no need, And as I said, the only way for us to stop them is to treat those individual nests and use our eyes in here and educate our children and stuff like that. And the $10 million that they've spent on brochures and stuff like that could be well served of sitting up in a little bus in the village or something like that and actually showing what people actually look at. We had another project up the coast that we finished about 3 years ago. They suspected there was fire ants on there. They went out and looked at them and they actually weren't fire ants, just regular ants. And that's the problem. You've got to understand what they actually look like in science. But we do have to treat them. We can't walk away from it, but this blanket aerial spray does not make sense. So, thank you.
Can I ask, when you say treat them, how do you recommend that
we just treat the actual nest itself.
For what way?
That was it for a
Methanol.
For a methanol, yeah. But you're treating one little small area. You're not out there using the fertiliser spreader.
Thank you very much, Jason. I super appreciate you turning up and giving us this information. I would also like to introduce to you an amazing man by the name of Hugh Carter. And Hugh is actually a legal advisor. We've had some dealings with Hugh, and I really appreciate his energy in regards to what's happening. Hugh, would you like to come up and actually speak? That'd be lovely, thank you.
Thank you for asking me to have a word tonight. I'm working in Canberra, actually, and I flew back this afternoon, and I was speaking with Louise this morning. Louise indicated that this meeting was on. I wasn't fully aware of that, but I said I think I'll be back just in time to come along. So that's good. I work for Senator Malcolm Roberts. And he's one of the few people who's actually taken this issue on board in the Senate in Canberra and has spoken about it now a number of times and given people an opportunity to actually find out a little bit more about what's going on here. Senator and I have both been into the Samford area now more than once, and Senator went up to Dawson Creek and had a good look at there and was shown around, and he's just truly appalled, and I am too. And I'm actually appalled, not so much about all of the finer detail that we've been going through tonight, but I'm appalled in relation to what I think sounds more like a snow job that's been done on the community. Now, we've all heard the details of these wretched fire ants that have been in Queensland now since at least, around 2001? And they've been treating them, bits and pieces, since then. Where is this terrible, terrible, scary damage that we're trying to stop? We've heard that some people have been bitten, but millions, potentially $500 million being projected to need to spend to fix this problem. And I'm saying, what problem? They're supposed to be terrible for your crops, terrible for your livestock, making it impossible, some of the stuff I read, to go to barbecues and do those things because they're just going to take over the world like aliens. But the reality is, this seems significantly overkill to me. And look, as a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for a very, very long time now, and mainly working assisting people who are very vulnerable. And I'm starting to feel that there's so many more vulnerable people in the community at the moment. Cost of living is horrible. We've got so many people homeless and living in tent cities. If I catch a ferry to the city, I go past at least 3 sets of little tent city areas where people are living very rough, just on the edge of the river. And that's just between St Lucia and the city proper in Brisbane. But what I do see is that something's wrong. There's something missing. And my radar is pretty damn good. I smell a rat, and that rat involves money. When we think about money, we know it's the root of all evil, but somebody is making a quid out of this. And it's not anybody here in this room, as I wouldn't have thought so. How much money does it cost? The chemicals, the people who are making a buck in terms of getting involved, the bureaucrats from Canberra, mostly in Queensland at the moment. But there are so many people living off this, well, it's not a fantasy, it's a nightmare, but living off this. And those who sell the chemicals, who supply the chemicals, who are involved in planning to deliver it, the government agencies now that are set up to deal with this. And I'm thinking, this is just turning into a topsy, and there are, I suspect, a whole stack of people involved in this who actually don't want this to go away because their livelihood depends on it, and the quality of their livelihood. And how somebody can make huge bucks out of these pissy little ants is just, beyond me. But it's not, because we see things like that in the community all the time. And whenever you come across government programs that are turning into a topsy and costing more and more and more and more money, you can absolutely bet your dollar that there are a whole stack of people around who are not there to solve the problem. They're actually living off the problem and hoping that it'll keep on going. And it veers off topic, and I'm not being bad or racist in any way, I can assure you. But the amount of money that is currently spent to close the gap in trying to assist Aboriginal people who live in poverty, who are often living in very isolated lives, where supposedly there are programs to help their health, their housing, find jobs, all of those things that we all pretty well take for granted. The billions of dollars per year that are put into that doesn't reach them. I recently travelled to Mornington Island. It's a little island. It's in the middle of the Gulf of Carpentaria. It is west of what's that little township? Normanton, west of Normanton, out of the Gulf. I went there, and Malcolm is planning on a visit there too soon too. I went there as his representative, invited by one of the elders. it is the most third world country, third world conditions, I'll rephrase that. I've travelled widely through the world and I've never seen anything as poor, as hopeless as the poor old people living on Mornington Island. It was the worst I've ever seen, worse than South America, worse in terms of Asia and Western Asia. I've never seen anything quite so bad. Where I was told that millions of dollars had been promised to set up a market garden. All there was a half-fenced paddock. That was it. Not a sod turned. They don't have the fishing industry that they once had because there's nobody on the island who can actually repair engines or boats or anything like that. On the tip, there were at least 4 oversized tinnies, the very large ones, that were on the tip because they had a couple of minor holes in the hulls, but there was nobody on the island and they couldn't get anybody to come and do some simple aluminium welding.
Just a question. So, the Eradication Council has an annual report, which I looked at, but there's no financials there. So, as a lawyer, is there the capacity to look at the financial reports for the Eradication Council to see what money is being allocated to wages and some of these people that are connected to politicians and what they're deriving in income? Because there is a money trail, you're absolutely right. But I couldn't understand when I looked at the annual report that there was no financials. Why? How is that?
Well, we won't get any of the financials out of the Commonwealth because we've asked for it. And their response is that we paid a lot of the money that we provided to the state. It's a state matter on then how they spend it.
But the Eradication Council, is that not?
Well, it is to the extent that the actual day-to-day choices they do. But if it's an eradication program, just about 100% of it comes from the feds. If it's a maintenance program, what's a better word for that? Suppression. Then
Control.
That will come out of the states. But what's happening is if you need actual data, it needs to come out of the state government. And at this point in time, they're pretty loath to provide that. And I'm sure you're having problems getting anything out of it. Yeah. Hopefully, suck up to whoever's going to be in government after October and see if they can do a better job of providing information even before the election, approaching various politicians and saying, look, you will have our support if, and start attaching a few conditions to support, that this one might be one of those answers. The Commonwealth, federal government, the current government are very good at putting their head in the sand and pretending everything's fine and make it all go away.
I deal with some government-owned corps in my job.
Yes.
If it's a government-owned corp that's been created, it will have an annual financial report that is audited by the government auditor's office. I forget the proper title.
Yep.
And they would have an annual financial report every year. I actually reviewed it in that job. So they would have that
Yes.
report. So
Probably-
is it a government-owned corp that's been created?
Probably the best way to access those is through the estimates program, and that's whether it's state, for example, a state parliament session that's set aside for politicians to actually ask questions of the senior public servants, where you can get them to produce figures and produce reports and things like that. In Queensland it has. The next Commonwealth one is getting towards the end of the year, around November. And they're quite useful in gathering information and putting bureaucrats on the spot in terms of getting them to be responsible for their own decisions. Yeah. Can I just say a couple of practical things that have come to mind while I've been listening in? And I'm not the font of all wisdom by any means, but in terms of the signs that you're setting up, I think they're a great idea. And in relation to your properties, I would definitely not just shut your gate, I would be locking your gate. and having some sort of sign that essentially says private property, do not come onto property without permission, and make sure you've got a contact phone number so you're not just blandly saying keep out all of you fire ant bureaucrats. I don't think you should do that. I think what you should do is give it your name and your phone number or a contact, even just an email, you don't want to be driven crazy, to discuss what is planned. That way you're not going to cop a large fine for being obstructive, because some of them are starting to put out some really nasty threats, which is quite a bullying exercise. Is that what you've got, something like that?
Yeah.
Please contact us.
But it's also got some legal cases on
So on the bottom you can just add something by putting contact or phone number and so forth. Because then because they will threaten you with a $13,000 or $15,000 fine. Nobody's being fined yet.
Why can't provide fund some form of cease and desist?
Well, what the problem we're having when we do approach these people, such as Darren, I was hoping Darren was actually going to be here tonight. Darren's a good guy and he means well, but he also says it's a bit of a conflict of interest. So everywhere we go, it's a conflict of interest. So Moreton Bay Regional Council or the City of Moreton are a little bit running away from us.
Ben, I've got to say, whoever put all this information together has done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And it's very confronting. But this tonight is preaching to the converted. What you need to do is get some media journalists on the job and invite them to the meeting and let them see the seriousness of it, because they have a medium where they can get the message out to thousands of people, and that makes the people who are responsible, the government, panic if they start to appear on TV programs.
I did invite the ABC and I invited Channel 9 and I invited 4BC, because I was on 4BC on the weekend. I'm actually going to be on Steve Austin's show tomorrow morning at 8:45. So mainstream media is picking this up.
To answer your question, that's exactly where we're going.
Yeah.
I did talk to Peter Dutton, and Peter Dutton did say he would like to see a current affair attached to this. So I'm hoping that Peter might be able to help us out with a journalist that he might know that can direct us in the right area for a current affair.
Yeah, anyway, thank you, Hugh. Did you actually put, Malcolm Roberts did put something to the Senate, didn't he, this week?
Yesterday. Yes, we're trying to find as many loopholes as we can. One of the ones is in relation to the CASA, which is the organisation that governs aerial flights, including the helicopters that dump this stuff. So we've actually put into the Senate a request or a direction that the Minister produce the CASA permits for the helicopters, so we can find out literally what their conditions are, because I've heard of some conditions basically saying they mustn't fly too close to houses and livestock, waterways, things like that. But I actually want to have it provided by the department, so they can't turn around and say, oh, that's an old one, or no, that's not one of our authorised ones or something. And as soon as we've got the real dig dive one, crunch. Because it's my understanding, I actually believe that there are conditions attaching to the permits that they are breaching left, right and centre. And if that's the case, that's another way of dealing with it other than through the biosecurity trick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyway, I just want to sum up very quickly what you can do still. So we do have biosecurity checklists on our Facebook account under files that if they're really trying to be forceful and coming on your property, you can ask each of the agents to fill them out, and they don't like doing that because it asks for lots of details. You could consider what your reasonable excuse could be, because under the Biosecurity Act it does say you can have a reasonable excuse, but again, it's sort of up to people to consider. I want to show you another video in a minute, where we were on Channel 9 News about, people might have seen in the news, there's been a lot of sick dogs, and we were talking about that, sick animals. So, I mean, that's a reasonable excuse to me if there's concerns about whether it's safe for our pets. You can donate to our crowdfunding. We did set up a crowdfunding. I'm working with Save the Bees Australia, and we're just trying to get awareness for what we're doing. We have a petition that can be signed, and everybody just needs to keep contacting their Member of Parliament and other MPs to voice your concerns. Just one final thing, I've been invited to speak at the rally in Brisbane. There's a rally in Brisbane on the 31st of August. So if anyone's feeling frustrated and they want to come and bang a drum and protest about this, you can come along. But I just wanted to, I don't know if everyone's seen this, but there was a Channel 9 news report recently. Can we play that quickly?
Warning for Celanese pet owners tonight. There are growing concerns that dogs are being poisoned by a common substance. Experts now warning of potential risks of fire ant bait.
Enjoying plenty of attention and much needed scratches, 12-year-old Axel is back at home and on the mend.
We weren't sure whether he was going to make it.
Owner Paolo was walking Axel down to the local park in Currumbin Waters, and when they got home, things took a turn for the worst.
He had a lick at his feet, and when we got home, we put him down later on that night. He started throwing up, and when he stopped throwing up,
Paolo rushing the Maltese Shih Tzu to the vet.
They got blood tests and told us that it was toxic. His liver had been totally poisoned by toxins.
Veterinarian Michael O'Donoghue claimed the poison likely came from recent fire ant bait in the area.
There's a strong association there between the fire ant bait and the clinical signs that we see.
Paolo's quick thinking saving Axel's life.
And he's one of our pets, and we pretty much do anything for them.
The National Fire Ant Eradication Program says treatment is non-toxic to pets. The active ingredients are commonly used in veterinary practices, like pest control and flea collars. But experts say too much of these ingredients can be detrimental.
But yeah, toxins certainly do kill animals on a regular basis.
Dr. Michael now urging locals to stay vigilant.
Well, obviously keep them off the grass if you know that fire ant bait has been applied on your property or outside your footpaths, you keep them off the grass.
But mostly nowadays I'm going to take them down to the sand of the beach where I know nothing's been treated.
Bella Schwarzenegger, 9 News.
The only problem with that is that we don't know that they've been there. Unless we actually see them and we alert each other as a community, we don't know that they've actually been there because they don't put a sign up. If they're 1080 baiting dogs, wild dogs, because they're destroying people's livestock, there's signs all over the place. And so this is a problem as well. Yes, Wendy?
I just wanted to ask, you've spoken about putting the signs up on the property. Our property's been flagged for the aerial spraying.
Yes.
What procedure would you recommend for people with that? We've had the council land mated next door with helicopters on the 31st of May, a back door neighbour that we're going to get done, I think in 2 weeks, which all runs down into the non-criminal creek on our property. How do we essentially say, like I'm going away for a week, so how do I ensure that my property doesn't get aerial baited when I'm not there and go into my wood?
So for the aerial baiting, we do have a pro forma letter over there that you can fill out, and you can send it to McDermott's Aviation and DAF, and it just gives you what to write to deny permission for low-flying aircraft on your property. And if you put the wording as we've got there, that seems to have kept the aerial.
Hi Sarah, it's Wendy. Yeah, I just think it's so important, and I've noticed like just weird things, like all of a sudden I've had dead toads, like just dead toads. You know, I mean, you never had dead toads in the garden, dead birds in the garden, and we're forests, so there's no reason why our property should be baited. because it's clerical forest, there's no excavation within it.
I've had so many people come to me and say since they've had the poisoning on their property, they hear no frogs anymore.
Yeah, and cicadas that are green.
I watched them doing it behind your place. And you know the 11 grits that are meant to be in a square metre? You should have seen stuff flying out of this chopper this morning that I saw them going over.
And then they say...
So they've poisoned even
They say for 24 hours to keep your chickens away, but if there's no disturbance of that hay, it's not 24 hours, like it's still there a week later or 2 weeks later if it doesn't rain, and we also had rain the evening we got baited.
Yeah, have a listen to it.
On that note, 24 hours for poultry, on the safety data sheet, it actually says do not let your poultry anywhere near it. On the permits, so on your aerial spraying, we've come across an old document which is an old document which is the only document that we've come across which seems to mention the cancer permit that they're operating under. And in that document it says that they cannot come closer than 300 metres horizontally to your house. So that that letter that you would have got in your post box, I think it says, fill out a form and then you won't come closer than 150 metres. And I suspect, and I'm stressing that I suspect, that might be a trap. Because, control. So I don't know if there's a way, some people have already filled it out and allowed the 150.
Well, I did fill it in, but I said that I was in no way consenting and that I wanted to be contacted. That was in May of 2023.
So I don't know what I guess I'm warning, just try not to fill out the form and then you consented to 150 metres for 300.
They're tricks.
But I don't know.
Just put none. None. Don't consent at all. Don't consent at all. Yes, sir?
One question too. They're supposed to not aerially based in an area that's less than, or in property that's less than 5 or 7 hectares. Has anyone heard of anything being baited aerially at less than that recently?
Well, their data would tell them that they're not meant to be doing that, but when they're actually baiting in areas down here, I'm a real estate agent and I know this country quite well. There are bigger properties also that have incision acreage in them. So if you've got a 40 acre, there could be a 2 acre incision. Well, they're just flying over the top of that as well. They're doing 5 acres around them and they're not obeying by their permit, full stop.
So they're still doing that even up to the recent times?
Correct. Yep. We also, I don't know whether Grant is happy to have a little bit of a say. Grant was actually, this is Grant Tipman from our local resident who actually was confronted by these people at his front gate. I just saw Grant and thought, I remember that.
Yes, just a bit of evidence for how we dealt with it really. So, yes, we're preaching converted. We happened to see the fire ant people driving down the Whites Mountain Road, so I was lucky enough to see them. No notification was happening, so I found them down the street, so they were with their, let's call them the budding spreaders. I would call it casually walking up the footpaths. No assessment of this is a 100 metre footpath by however metre. And so I did video that. I spoke to the gentleman calmly to say, I live up the road, what's happening? Put it into his iPad. Yes, sir, you're due to be done today. So it was the first notification that I had that was going to be happening at that point. So he said, are you ready for us to come? I said, no, I'm not. I'd like to have a meeting about this. And so he said, okay, well, be there at 10 o'clock. And so I had my gate, which is permanently locked. So I was waiting at 10 o'clock. He then brought his manager to come with him. I recorded it. The manager said, why do you need to record it? I said, I'm just a concerned citizen and I want to make sure we've got it on tape. He said, okay, I'll have to record it as well. I said, please do. I have no problem with that. I then went through, I had the checklist ready to go, but in the first instance I said, I'm just not at all comfortable with someone coming onto my property, I don't understand the chemical. They then rolled out the it's safe, all of the certification process. I said I remain uncomfortable about the chemical being used on my property. He said, okay, and he said, did you know it's been all of the safety things? I said, I'm not comfortable. At that point in time, he said, okay, you'll be referred to the GAPS team, and the GAPS team will be in contact with you, at which stage he provided me the notice of refusal, which says on there, you'll be fined $14,725 should you have no reasonable excuse to do it. And it goes through that. So I'm okay with that as a threat to walk through that. I have yet not been contacted by the GAPS team. So at this stage, that's happened. But from a scientific application of the product, there is none. We were very casually walking up the footpath, so I feel uncomfortable that the bait's on the footpath, but again, I can't prevent them doing that. But at the moment, it's put them off coming any further onto the property. But I'm waiting for the GAPS team, so I'm interested to find out what's next.
When did this happen?
That would be 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then when I confronted them and they said, okay, they left after the meeting, they then disappeared from the street. So I don't know where they went, but they just packed up, disappeared.
How many acres have you
The
got?
total property is 48, but there's a 5-acre lot. So I don't think they had, it's on a separate title. So I believe they were coming to deal with the 5-acre lot, not the 43 at the back. So, yeah, and I've been in contact with them about the 43 not consenting, so I've called and I've got a call back on that. And again, I've just put all my concerns to them, so I did finally get a call back on it. And they just a spiel they run through about how safe it is, blah, blah, blah. But I remain, I just can't accept that it's coming onto our property.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you, Grant. And that's just one example of being threatened. They do threaten you, and it's quite remarkable because not that long ago, Sarah and I were going for a little drive, and we saw them, and they drove up the driveway, on which was 5 acres. There were 3 vehicles filled up with people. Hopped out. We let them hop out. I then drove up that driveway because I knew the gentleman who owned the 5 acres, drove into his carport, knocked on his door, and I said, are you okay with these people on your property? And he's a very large man, and he was shaken at what they were telling this man. And they shut him into his own house and proceeded to pack their little fertiliser spreaders, and by the time we got to them, and said to them, you realise you're not to be putting this where fire ants aren't visible. And they were saying, well, we're just going out to have a look if there are fire ants. And they had the product ready. If we went there, they would have just dusted his whole place. But this man was a little bit shaken up by these people. So, the threats from these people are quite remarkable. But Rhys Pianta actually said to me over the phone that I believe they've cancelled this City of Moreton conversation with Dr. Robert Puckett, who I really would have loved to have gone and met, because in one sense this man makes a lot of sense. And his words resonate to me, that he says, the only way we can make way with this is to gather as a community. But they do not want to understand what we've got to say. It's their way or the highway. Yes?
Can residents from Cashmere come, Aidensville, everyone? Yes.
Absolutely. This is what this is all about. We want to now, from this meeting, reach out to everybody. But this is going to be an ongoing saga. If it's not fire ants, it's going to be
Mpox, or if it's going to be something else. So what we need to do, we need to keep together. What we need to do as humans, I believe, is get back to tin tats. Get back and support each other. Let's all unite as amazing human beings who are so privileged to live in such a beautiful, pristine environment. Let's all come together. Let's all, if you're feeling vulnerable, do call someone, and call someone from this organisation. All let's join hands, and thank you all very much for coming, and I'm sure we'll meet again. And I'm actually not sure if we're finished. Sarah, do you need to?
What's the best forum for you guys? Like Facebook?
Facebook,
Is that the best
Stop the Toxic Fire Ant program. We've got a Facebook page, we've got a Telegram. Not much is going on Telegram, but we think, sometimes Facebook accounts just disappear. So I have an email address, stopthetoxicfireantprogram@gmail.com. So anyone who wants to get in touch, just email me or through Facebook. We do have a load of information documents here. We got the 32 questions I submitted to DAF. We got some facts. We've got the aerial denial forms, the permits, and if you want to buy any no trespass signs, they're here too.
There's also a board, if you'd like to leave your email address.
Yes.
We can send you this document with all the links to all the studies that we've got to educate ourselves.
But thank you for coming.